All right, let's talk about the five love languages, which I think most people are familiar with. Most people have probably taken a quiz to figure out their love language. Maybe your spouse has taken it or you forced them to take it. So that is a helpful tool, but it can also backfire. And let's get into that a little bit. So, the love languages. If you're not familiar with the book and the concept by Gary Chapman, basically we all have dominant, maybe one or two love languages that we speak and then also you receive. And I guess there can sometimes be a difference, your preference for speaking and receiving, but usually we tend to speak the language that we prefer and vice versa. So, very often spouses will speak different love languages, and then they will essentially, you can end up feeling unloved by your spouse because they're not speaking your love language. They're not filling your love tank, which is another concept. So, I know for me personally, words of affirmation are one of my primary love languages, and my husband is acts of service. Especially when we first got married, those were the primary ones. I think we both were pretty high on physical touch, which is helpful. We're both similar in that regard, but we are different. I spoke affirmations. I wanted affirmations. I didn't feel loved if I didn't have enough affirmations, and vice versa. The pitfalls I can find and the ways that this can create more problems in your marriage is when you're overly fixated on how your spouse isn't speaking your language and you're telling them they need to speak your language. And I'm sure in the book he probably cautions against this, but not everyone reads the entire book. And I know I didn't, I'll admit. There's so many books out there, I haven't felt the need to go back and read that one. So, my suggestion would be have that information. It's good. It's anything I think that helps you to know yourself better, know your spouse better is good. But what you do with that information is the important thing. So instead of focusing on, how they're not speaking your love language, try to understand and learn their love language. So acts of service. So even though my husband might not say, I love you, I appreciate you, all these wonderful things that I wanted to hear, especially in the early days, he would do acts of service. He would help with, chores around the house. He might cook dinner for me. He might do something, give me a back massage, something that speaks love, but I wouldn't always hear it as that. I would choose not to focus on that because my brain would be so fixated on the words and the lack thereof. So when I would try to express that to him, what he would hear is, I'm doing all these things, but you don't even recognize them. So he would feel hurt, he would feel unappreciated, and then that would kind of demoralize him. And then vice versa, I would be saying I love him, but he wasn't feeling loved because I wasn't showing these acts of service. So fast forward 10 years into our marriage, I recognize I think I should go back and take the quizzes again. I know I took the temperament again and my temperaments had changed because I've grown and changed as a person. So I'm wondering if my love languages have changed because now I see how he shows love, even though he might not always say it, but he also does say it more because in the past he felt like I was expecting him to say particular words and kind of forcing it, and it didn't feel like love because it just felt like a requirement that he was needing to meet, which really felt yucky for him. And then it didn't feel good when he said it to me because it didn't feel as genuine. So, love languages, very helpful, great information, great tool. But please do not fixate on how your spouse is not speaking your language. And please learn how to speak their language and hear their love language because that makes them feel good because obviously they both of you want to each other to feel loved, and of course I'm sure they will in some ways strive to speak your language, so make sure you appreciate that and do not do anything like critical or say anything because of course it might not be as natural for them to do it. So just graciously receive and appreciate everything that they do. say, but please try to speak their language. Try to appreciate how they show you love. I now feel so loved by acts of service, and I do still feel loved by affirmation, but I find I don't need it as much. But when I do get them, it also does mean a lot. So I hope that's a helpful little reminder. I hope that can save you some arguments or just keep you in a more positive mindset towards your spouse, because yes, it can be hard when you're speaking different languages, but just like in general, if you are trying to communicate with someone, you don't typically force them to speak your language. You try to understand their language and vice versa. So again, don't be upset if your spouse is not speaking your language, but if they are speaking a language, they are trying to show love. Great, wonderful. Try to receive that and appreciate that and try to strive to speak theirs. I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions about the love languages, please post them below. I'd appreciate if you like my video, if you can subscribe, and I hope that this has been helpful for you.